Welcome to AI Power Lean Six Sigma, and we'll continue right now with our demand methodology, proceeding into the measure phase. Right here, we have the purpose, objective, and target outputs that we'll look at for this measure phase here. Purpose, we're here to quantify the current state of the process, establish baseline performance with reliable data, and validate that the problem that we've already cited in the defined phase is measurable and significant. The objective, to develop a data collection plan, identify key metrics and measurement systems, and to capture customer and process performance through voice of the customer and process mapping. Target outputs. Well, we're looking to have a data collection plan established. We're looking to have baseline metrics established that include cycle time defects, SLA compliance. We've seen some of that information, but the business was able to provide that to us. But that's all part of the measure phase information we want to have as one of our target outputs. The voice of the customer analysis. We want to analyze those anecdotal contributions from clients that were fortunate enough to have told us their experience with our business. And we want to have a stakeholder map and refine the SIPOC as well. But we'll get through that stakeholder map so we can see how that looks like for a target output here from the measure phase. Of course, ChatGPT is our chosen generative AI tool that we're going to stick with throughout the demand methodology. And right now we're going to target the data collection. Here we have our AI-enabled data collection plan is what we're going to look to have as an output here. And just like we had before, we've got our prompt on the left, we've got our ChatGPT prompt input on the right, where it says, what can I help with? And the prompt that we're going to input here is create a data collection plan for Summit Financial Services to measure loan approval cycle times, include what data to collect, how to collect it, who owns it, and frequency. We're going to take that prompt, stick it in the box, and we'll see what ChatGPT comes up with. This here is the output of the data collection plan prompt that we had put in the box. The output that was provided to me, like I said, there might be slight modifications with sub-details of how yours may be represented, but this is the gist of it here, right? We have a data collection plan that was output by ChatGPT here with loan approval cycle times. The purpose and scope is identified as follows. The purpose, to quantify baseline approval speed and SLA performance. The process scope, consumer loan applications from intake to underwriting to compliance to final decisioning and notification. Operational definitions that must be used consistently here as what the start time is. It's a timestamp when a completed application is submitted in the LOS. It's the end time, right? The timestamp when final approve or decline decisions, whenever they're logged in and the applicant is actually notified, right? We got our cycle time definition, the end time, the start time, and calendar days, right? We want to know exactly how we're measuring this stuff. SLA target, right? Less than or equal to 7 calendar days from start to end, right? Did it meet the SLA or not? Yes or no? 1 if it did, and 0 if it did not. Rework events, defined as any return to the previous step due to missing or incorrect info. And the application types, personal, auto, or credit line applications, consumer only, right? So this gives us our operational definitions. This is generated from ChatGPT as an output from our prompt input that provided us with this information here. And we're going to go to a screen share so you can see the entirety of that output as well. So I'm going to hop into ChatGPT and show you what it output on that side. So come on over. Here you can see our screen share. This is our output from ChatGPT. We've got our prompt that we input right here, right? And then here at the bottom, we have the output, of which I read a screenshot of, but here you can see it in its entirety. We already saw the purpose and scope. We already saw the operational definitions, right? But these are additional elements that it provided. It also told us what data to collect, right? Right here, you can see the data elements that we'll be looking to collect here in our measure phase that were already provided by ChatGPT. All right, we got our core timestamps, our status milestones, outcome fields, quality flags, SLA fields, stratifiers, voice of customer linkage, technical identifiers here, right? In our data sets, where the data lives, right? It has our sources of where the data lives for our analysis here. We have the loan origination system. I referenced this earlier as a LOS, but that's what it means there. I didn't spell it out earlier, but here you see it's the loan origination system, right? Tells our sources and even some of the details within it that we're looking to capture from it, like core timestamps, statuses, and outcomes. Got a document management system, right? Looking for rework and missing and duplicate documents. Compliance, case management, our contact center and CRM, right? Might be a system that we look at as well for data that will inform us about what's happening here. How to collect, right? We get into the method on how to collect the data here that's spelled out right here for our measure phase, thanks to ChatGPT and thanks to our generative AI tool. Gives us a primary method for collecting data, right? Automated extract via BI, ETL, business intelligence, and extraction, transformation, and loading using nightly SQL views from the LOS plus left joins to DMS and compliance tables. So very specific. Transformations, right? Gets into those details here. Validation checks, opportunity that could be automated here, right? Got that spelled out. Sampling and frequency. It even provided the RACI, that is a responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed model here for ownership with the titles of the people involved, their roles. Provided us with the measurement system and data quality, right? MSA Lite for timestamps, right? Looking at repeatability and reproducibility for our Lean Six Sigma project here. The field dictionary, issue log, these are all measurement systems and data quality pieces that we can utilize here. Compliance and privacy. It gets into that. We got details here. Storage and access, right? Discussing the landing zone, the semantic layer, even tooling, all right? So it's getting pretty detailed here with what we can do and what we need to do for our measure phase. Reporting and baseline outputs, providing baseline metrics that we can seek to have here, right? Average cycle time, median, standard deviation, etc. Stratified views by channel, product, credit tier, branch, or underwriter. All of these things are here, right? The Sigma level, even having that as a reporting and baseline output for us to use, right? We have our risk and mitigations, right? Missing and dirty timestamps, validation rules, exception table, data stewardship, process changes, mid-measurement, etc. here. So, and these are all things that are drafted here, right? And you would go through it and you would validate it, right? Because you want to review what's being output here. But this thing gives you quite a start here, right? You have your entire data collection plan drafted from start to finish. And of course, human in the loop, yourself, you would review it during your Lean Six Sigma projects to see, check the quality of it and validate the outputs here that it's actually something you would like to move forward with. But you can see right here, it's quite an output for our data collection with our AI-powered Lean Six Sigma measure phase data collection plan. Without further ado, we're going to hop back into the slides. Seeing it here on ChatGPT, let's hop back to the slide deck. Now we want to get into our next prompt. We want to enable baseline metrics, right? So we got our prompt on the left, we got ChatGPT's screenshot on the right, right? Here, our prompt is to summarize the Summit Financial Services loan approval data set into baseline metrics, including average approval time, SLA compliance percentage, and the Sigma level score and variation, right? What would this Lean Six Sigma project be if we didn't calculate a Sigma score? We're going to stick that in the box. Let's see what we come up with. Here you have it. This is our output here. This is a screenshot showing our baseline performance summary for Summit Financial Services loan approval data set. Some of this information you had seen before, such as the average loan approval time, 12.8 days. Our SLA compliance, we know we're not meeting it at all. Our standard deviation, we can see that's new information to us, right? 2.8 days. We got our sigma z-score, our short-term sigma z-score, and negative 2.07. Process mean is well above the SLA target. In other words, we're way off. Our estimated sigma level score long-term, we're looking at roughly 0.57 sigma, which is far below acceptable capability. In our sample size, we know we had 50 different loan applications and loan IDs that we had in our original data table that we shared during the define phase. And it shows us here, this shows that the process is operating at less than 1 sigma, right? 0.57 sigma, with no approvals, 0, meeting the 7-day SLA target. And that's a powerful baseline story for the measure phase, right? We have very clear data telling us exactly how this process is performing in the current state. And what would data be without data visualization? So I was able to use ChatGPT to take it a level further and get visualizations on this data. And you'll find, by the way, in using ChatGPT, that it's always very, I'll use the word helpful, right? It's going to suggest a next step that it can provide for you, a next step in its service in a way. And one of the things it recommended to me was visualizing this data, right? So I answered affirmative yes for it to be visualized, and this is what we have. This is one visualization here showing a histogram of our output, right? So this histogram shows the loan approval cycle time distribution for Summit Financial Services. And you can see our frequency and number of applications. And on the left, we got our approval time in days. On the x-axis, right here, our dotted line, our dashed red line here is the 7-day SLA. Every piece of our data, our entire data set, all of our performance is to the right of the target SLA because none of them have met the mark. And we can see our average is actually 12.8, far above the 7 days. And we can see the distribution of our data set too around that mean. So this allowed us to visually represent this data for our shareholders, our stakeholders and shareholders, when it comes to showing this data, so we can see exactly how this business is performing. And this makes it very clear that we're underperforming in our loan approval cycle time. Here are the additional data visualizations. So you can actually get additional views and additional looks. You can take your pick really and see which one resonates with you, resonates with the audience for showing how this process is performing. This is another representation. We've got a box plot of the loan approval times on the left. We've got a control chart of the loan approval times on the right. Now, once again, we got our vertical dashed line showing our number 7 days SLA. Everything is to the right here. We see our mean, right? That's our 12.8. We see our distribution within our box here to show our mins, maxed, etc. Here, I like this control chart view, right? We got our average here represented with this line going right down the middle. We got our target 7 days here as well. And our upper and lower lines represent our upper and lower spec targets of plus 3 sigma on the high and minus 3 sigma on the low. And these are all of our data points here. All 50 of our data points are distributed, and we can see how they are distributed within this data set amongst the mean. Excellent visualization here between our control chart, our box plot, and our histogram. This was all done very quickly with ChatGPT and leveraging generative AI to create an AI-powered Lean Six Sigma measure phase data visualization output. Now, let's take another look really quick. I'm going to hop into ChatGPT and screen share exactly what I referenced about it being suggestive on providing additional services, as I call it, and how I arrived at getting these visualizations of the box plot, the control chart, and the histogram. So let's jump back into ChatGPT really quick. So this is our prior chat here that we were having, a continuation of the chat. And it asks here, would you like me to create a histogram visualization of the data set with the SLA target line mark so learners can see the gap between performance and the goal. I just simply answered yes, right? And with that, voila, we've got this histogram created. This is exactly what you saw in the deck. And it tells what the red dash line is, what the blue solid line is, right? Gives an explanation for all of those things. And then to further ask if I wanted to create a box plot or control chart, right? And I simply said yes. And that's how I arrived at the box plot and control chart here. That were great visualizations to capture here, right? And of course, it'll go on and on here. These prompts have already been developed, already created these, so you can see exactly where I'm getting it from. But there you have it. Very simple to create that in ChatGPT. Even suggest which visualizations might be best, right? Or that you might want to use, right? And of course, if you wanted to, you can recommend others and have it do something different. But it's very helpful in creating the data viz for you. Now, let me hop back into the PowerPoint slides. All right. We got our ChatGPT prompt for voice of the customer, AI-enabled customer complaints analysis. You already know the template we're utilizing. You got our prompt on the left. We got our ChatGPT on the right. The prompt we're going to use is this. Analyze the Summit Financial Services customer complaints, voice of customer examples, and group them into key VOC themes related to loan approval delays. Now, let's see what ChatGPT output for us with this. Really quick, these are our examples that we put in, right? So we have 10 voice of the customer examples that we're going to put in. These are Summit Financial Services clients, right? And you can see some of these points, some of which we saw earlier, right? It took too long to get my loan approved. I almost went with another bank. I had to resubmit documents twice, very frustrating, right? The competitor approved my mortgage in 7 days. Here it took 15 days, etc. Took those VOCs, dropped them in, boom. Now we have our themes. So ChatGPT was able to output themes. Here I copy and pasted the actual output from ChatGPT from a text perspective and dropped it in here. But we can see it was categorized into 4 different themes based off these 10 different VOC samples that were taken. Themes that it created are excessive processing delays, redundant and inefficient documentation, poor communication and transparency, internal handoffs and bottlenecks. These are 4 customer complaint themes. He even tells you long approval times compared to competitors, extended wait times, 2 to 3 weeks for simple loans, repeated requests for the same information, multiple document resubmissions causing frustration, overly long and repetitive application forms, lack of status updates during the process. You can see all of these things that ChatGPT was able to organize themes based off that VOC information. Very powerful. We also have this here we created in our measure phase. This is our stakeholder map. This is the last deliverable we're creating from our measure phase in this example with AI Power Lean Six Sigma, right? We've got a prompt on the left, ChatGPT on the right. We drop this prompt. Create a stakeholder influence versus interest grid for Summit Financial Services loan approval process improvement project. Let's see what happened. Right? Here you have it. Have our stakeholder influence versus interest grid. This is the screenshot of the output. Have our high influence, high interest. These are people you want to manage closely, right? We got the VP of Consumer Lending, the Director of Loan Operations, right? Risk and Compliance Manager. Gives you a rationale here, right? The VP of Consumer Lending is accountable for customer experience and revenue growth. We might want to pay close attention to them and keep them close to our project and what we're up to. The Director of Loan Operation, well, they actually own the process being approved. They need to stay in the loop. Risk and Compliance, they need to ensure regulatory requirements are not compromised with the efforts that we're engaging in here. Then we have our high influence but low interest, people you want to keep satisfied. Don't forget about them. We have our CIO. They own the IT systems enabling automation, but may not be involved day to day. We have our CFO, and they care about the cost savings, but not the operational details. This is an example of the output that we're able to create with our stakeholder map. And we were even able to take that information and create a visual matrix here. So thanks to ChatGPT, I was able to utilize that information, get it out of that text format, and now put it into a visual format. In this visual format here, you can see we have our groups that you already saw represented in the matrix, but here we have our visual stakeholder influence first interest grid. We've got our VP of consumer lending, director of loan operations, risk and compliance manager, all in a managed closely group. To keep informed, we have our loan officers, underwriters, customer service reps, monitor, general branch staff, other support staff, and of course, to keep satisfied, our CIO and CFO. Same information, but the powerful part of this is that it's a different representation, and depending on who you're showing the information to, you might want to choose this format of a visual matrix instead of the documented written one we had shared a moment ago, or having it listed there. So another example of how AI can create powerful deliverables for you that you can tailor towards your audience, but you can do it much faster and expedite the process of improving the business for our client. Just to wrap up the AI-enabled measure phase, this is how ChatGPT supports the outcomes of the measure phase in Lean Six Sigma, the MAIF methodology. We have 1, it can provide a reliable baseline. ChatGPT summarizes the data into baseline metrics, ready for charts and dashboards. 2, aligned focus. The voice of customer clustering and SIPOC refinement can help teams agree on where to measure. Now here, we didn't demonstrate the SIPOC. We went and showed the stakeholder matrix, but if you wanted to, you can create a SIPOC or any additional deliverable that you choose using ChatGPT or generative AI powered Lean Six Sigma. Last but not least, the outcome that ChatGPT supports is a structured plan. ChatGPT drafts a collection plan and stakeholder map so data gathering is consistent. And without further ado, let's get into the analyze phase.